Sorry, I'm a couple of minutes late, or well, let's say 42 seconds late. Just trying to get here in time, trying to find a good signal. We're in Trafalgar Square. Katie, Mike, Tish, hello. Mary, Peter, good on you, mate. Oh, so many. Too many. It's lovely to see you. We're in Trafalgar Square. We're going to have a little wander around, and we're going to eventually end up at Piccadilly Circus. If you haven't met me before, I'm Gerard, Jezza. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. And I would quite like to dedicate what we're going to do tonight to Nick, who last night, Nick Richmond, London guide, who more or less, well, he had a bit of an issue with his gimbal. Somebody, a cyclist, kind of went past him and tried to grab that. I just want to show him and kind of celebrate the fact that we are all, as guides in these big cities, sometimes, and it can be a little bit dangerous. So I've come out at 7 o'clock, and I want to show Nick. Just keep going for it. What he's doing is wonderful. Yeah, I think he's okay. I think he was a bit shook up, as you would be. In this city, it's busy. It's always busy. But Nick's been doing this a long time. Mike has said he's coming to London next weekend. Going to follow your route, and then we're going to go to the Piccadilly Theatre to see Ghosts. Ah, is that 222 a ghost story? Or, well, Mike, you need to hang out with me. Come and visit. So we're in Trafalgar Square. It's quite busy. The theatres haven't opened or haven't started their shows yet. It's been a rainy day. It could be Ibsen, Piccadilly Theatre. Maybe we should go up there. Isn't it lovely? It's really dark, actually, where we are right now. But on screen, it looks wonderful. But the reason I wanted to show us Trafalgar Square and start a bit before Piccadilly is we have a fourth plinth. We have a new sculpture here. And the fourth plinth, Plinth, is the only plinth in Trafalgar Square that doesn't have a permanent fixture. And the other three, well, they have George IV, General Charles James Napier, and Henry Havelock. But the funding ran out for a fourth one. By the way, in this direction, that's Whitehall. If you walk about 10 minutes in that direction, you're along Downing Street. You took a right, 10 minutes in that direction, and obviously, you may know, worldwide, we've been going through some issues. What a mess has been going on in the UK government. Resignations, sackings, votes. So by next week, well, who knows? It could be me. I could be the next Prime Minister. So just want to let you know that maybe I might not be doing this next week. Go see if they have any vacancies. Yeah, 45 days. Unbelievable. These fountains in Trafalgar Square were originally erected to stop civil disturbance. They look beautiful, but they didn't want masses of people gathering together, so they put fountains in because they thought that would separate people. Micah said, who knows, I couldn't be any worse. That's true. Well, you haven't seen me in action. So, the funding ran out for a fourth plinth, And for 150 years, this is the northwest corner of the square. It had an empty pedestal. And then in 1999, that's when you had the first permanent fixture for a while. You may have noticed that there was a bit of ice cream with the cherry on top and a wasp. But this is by Samson Kambalu, and it's called Antelope. And it's the 14th temporary statue. The artist, Samson, has dedicated it to a man called John Chilembwe, who was from Malawi. And he was a Baptist preacher. So it's dedicated to two people, John Chilembwe and a European missionary, John Chorley. It's basically to do with a photograph that was taken with Chilembwe wearing a hat. And that was defying a rule. It forbade Africans from wearing hats during colonial times in front of white people. Let's just come up. We're going past the National Gallery here. So basically it reveals these hidden narratives of, I suppose, underrepresented people in the history of the British Empire. It's quite a nice one to put. They say that the next fixture, there's no plans to put a permanent fixture here for about 4 years. So it is going to be temporary, whatever happens. I'll just put a photo on the chat of John Chilembwe. The idea of him wearing a hat in front of a European missionary. This is quite a nice one. I like the light, and as we look down here, the way the light has come from the Canadian Embassy or the Canadian High Commission. Let's put Chilembwe just here. You may hear music in the background. Obviously, we have street entertainers. There's St. Martin in the Fields Church and the National Gallery in the distance. Oh, that's good, Joseph. The next is in 2024 by Teresa Margulies. And James has said, isn't there a plan to install a statue of Queen Elizabeth? There is a plan, but they've said for the next couple of years at least that they have commissions agreed to. So it won't be for a couple of years at least. Audrey, that's okay. I'm always late starting these tours. This is John Chilembwe, who was a Baptist pastor, an educator. He led an uprising against British colonial rule in Nyasaland, which we now know as Malawi. And it was illegal for him to wear a hat in front of a European missionary. I had a thought, well, I think I'd look good up there, but that's okay. Don't worry, we'll talk about that another time. Canadian High Commission. We're on the northwest square of Trafalgar Square, northwest side, should I say. And obviously it's pre-7:30. So people are trying to get home and people are rushing to get to theatres. and we're going to walk up to Piccadilly Circus. A couple of theatres around the corner. Her Majesty's Theatre, which traditionally, since 1797 when it opened, has changed name depending on the monarch. So it has been called His Majesty's, Her Majesty's, His Majesty's, Her Majesty's. And I suppose if tradition runs, it will at some point be named His Majesty's. But I think after 70 years, it should remain Her Majesty's Theatre. And it's showing Phantom of the Opera. And that's on Haymarket. Haymarket, it is what it says. It was originally a hay market, a market for farming supplies. But we're going to take a little quick walk up the back of the Haymarket Theatre. Now, some of you may know that I've been an actor about 25 years. One of my biggest successes, or one of the things I was most proud of, even though I only had a small part in it, was about 8 years ago. I was in a play called Fatal Attraction, based on the movie, screenplay by James Dearden, but the play was directed by Trevor Nunn. And this is the entirety of the Haymarket Theatre at the back. Some of it is now a hotel, the Haymarket Hotel. Had Natasha McElhone and Kristen Davis, who plays Charlotte in Sex and the City. And it's quite fun. Whenever you get to be in a West End show, you feel great about it, but it's quite transient, quite ephemeral. You end up for 6 months, 8 months, sometimes a year, being in something, and you get entry to all the big clubs and all the big bars and all the exclusive establishments in the West End. And then the job ends, and then you're back to being a regular person again. And I don't miss being a regular person, but it is a bit of a culture shock when you suddenly have to go for your Tesco meal deal rather than going to the Ivy. This is Her Majesty's Theatre, showing Phantom of the Opera. The second longest running show in the West End. Longest running show, musical-wise, is Les Miserables. And the two longest running plays are The Woman in Black, which was originally a novel by Susan Hill, and by far the longest is The Mousetrap, which is at the St. Martin's Theatre, written by Dame Agatha Christie. And The Mousetrap has been running for 70 years. With the same cast. It's unbelievable. It's quite slow now. The same actors have been in the show. Cats ran for 25 years at what we now call the Gillian Lynn Theatre, which was called the New London. The Gillian Lynn Theatre is on Drury Lane. The Theatre Royal Drury Lane, by the way, in Covent Garden, is not on Drury Lane. It's on Catherine Street, was on Drury Lane. I worked at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane for quite a few years as a tour guide. And they say that for many years, when Miss Saigon was on at Drury Lane, people would turn up thinking, when Miss Saigon was on, that they were going to see Cats. And the staff, when they were rushed off their feet, they would look at the time, the date, the level people were on, and they would just expect the people were at the right theatre. And then some people would complain at the intermission that they hadn't seen any cats. And then they'd say, well, this is Miss Saigon. And they'd say, well, okay, Siamese cats, it doesn't matter, where are they? It's obviously a joke. Thank you, I appreciate that. Trevor Nunn and Ian McKellen have worked closely together for years and years. Now, when I went to theatre school, I wanted to work with Trevor Nunn. That was one of my ambitions. I wanted to work at the National Theatre, I wanted to work at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I wanted to work at the Globe, and I wanted to work with Trevor Nunn. I did 2 out of the 4 so far after 25 years. The other 2 I've still to do. The Theatre Royal Haymarket here is where we did Fatal Attraction. Has no dressing room, 13. It's considered an unlucky number. Now, I don't want to be bitter, but when we did Fatal Attraction, if you know the movie, if you haven't seen it, it's a classic. Michael Douglas, Glenn Close. The phrase bunny boiler comes from Fatal Attraction. And we used live bunnies in the show. They didn't boil them, they had fake ones which they boiled. Now, the bunnies had their own dressing room. We had 2 of them, and every 4 weeks, because they got so big, they gave them off, they palmed them off to staff, to crew, to band members, to front of house, to cast. They had their own dressing room at the top of the theatre. I had to share my dressing room with 6 other guys. I'm not being bitter. But I was up for the role of the bunny and I didn't get it. My son Peter is moving to have a couple of days. I hope it is nice. Oh, is that where it's set? And this is a Theatre Royal. Now, you could say there are 3 Theatre Royals in the West End. The main one, the biggest one, and the most important one is the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. That was the first theatre built in the West End after the restoration of Charles II in 1660. He granted 2 men, William Davenant and Thomas Killigrew, licences for 2 playhouses. The Theatre Royal Drury Lane, the Theatre Royal Lincoln's Inn. Lincoln's Inn burnt down, and the licence for the Theatre Royal Lincoln's Inn eventually went in the 1700s to a man called John Rich, who built the Theatre Royal Covent Garden. We now know that building as the Royal Opera House. This is the 3rd Theatre Royal, and the licence for this was granted in 1821. James has said he was lucky enough to see Sir Ian and Sir Patrick in Godot. I'd say that's Godot. Godoy. I think I know what you mean, James. John saw 42nd Street on the opening night, Theatre Royal Drury Lane. Unbelievable. You guys. So this was the 3rd licence. I'll probably move on because I've seen security looking at me, and sometimes they cross the road and they say, why are you filming? And I say I'm on Hago, and they say, oh, that's all right then. And I was talking about having access to clubs and bars when you get in a West End show. It's all lovely, but the main thing is you're acting. You're doing what you wanted to do, your dream. And as we all know, that popular phrase, if you're doing what you want to do, it's not work. So I've been lucky enough to do that off and on for the last 25 years. And when we did Fatal Attraction, our press night coincided when the reviewers came in with the press night of Blithe Spirit, the great Noel Coward show. And there were 2 well-known actors in it, Charles Edwards, who was in The Crown, and, well, somebody you may have heard of, Dame Angela Lansbury. And they had their press night in the next room to us. And Angela Lansbury walked through and said hello to all of us at one point. She just walked through the room, and I don't know what it was, and I don't know why we did it, but I kind of do. Everyone stood up and applauded just for Angela Lansbury. She was just walking through in a white linen suit. You kind of would applaud, wouldn't you? That's right, Mark. She only died last week. She had a house down in Cork near Clonakilty, which I know the great Lord Dave Kavanagh does many tours around Cork, and that's where my mother's family are from. And I'll be there in a couple of weeks, and I know Clonakilty well. But she had family issues. She lost one of her family members, and her and her husband decided to buy a house down in West Cork, probably about 7 miles from where my family and my mother's family are based. This is Panton Street. Just want to show the queue for a play by C.P. Taylor called Good. Every time we go past this theatre, the Harold Pinter, which was for many years known as the Royal Comedy Theatre, one of the royal establishments of London. There's always something different on here. And this was probably, talk about royal theatres, the third ever tour I ever did for Hago. I did around Shakespeare's Globe, the South Bank. I did the first theatres in London, in Covent Garden, and then I did one called the Royal Theatres of London. And Good, by C.P. Taylor, stars David Tennant, and I saw this last week. It's only got a cast of 3, but there are about 15 characters in it. And it's all set just before the Second World War. And it's to do with a scientist who was recruited by the SS, and his best friend is Jewish. And the whole idea is whether a good person can be corrupted. And it is intense. If you do come to London, come and see Good. So that starts at 7:30. This is why this was probably a crazy idea to start the tour at 7. Normally I start from 7:45, 8 o'clock. Audrey said, Jared, are we going to see Piccadilly Circus? You hold your horses, Audrey. We're 2 minutes away from that. I just want to take a nice lead up to it. I didn't mean that to be rude. I was just trying to be funny. The bad reviews will start. So Piccadilly, the name. Piccadilly is a road. When you say to somebody, I'll meet you in Piccadilly, you should say, I'll meet you in Piccadilly Circus. Because Piccadilly Circus is a circus, a square in the middle of Piccadilly. Piccadilly is a road that leads from Piccadilly Circus all the way to Hyde Park Corner. So it's half a mile long. So you're in trouble if you say to somebody, I'll meet you in Piccadilly. We could call this light pollution. We could just call this the lights of London. But it's so bright here at the moment. If none of these cars and buses and cabs and bikes were here, like it was in March, April, May 2020, this would be pitch black at this time of night. No lights were on. All the establishments were closed. And I remember coming in or driving through the West End. I was going shopping for my mother, and I came through. I was allowed to do it. And I came out at one point, and I just parked up here. And I just came out because I'd never seen London at night so quiet. And I came out and I just started making noise. I was on my own, and I just started going ba, ba, ba. And I could hear the echo of my voice against the buildings. I don't think that will ever happen again. I want to post a couple of images. So we're coming up to Piccadilly now. Now, during the Second World War, Piccadilly Circus tube station was home to many people who were sheltering from the Blitz in 1940 and 1941. And this is what they had to go through. They slept on the escalators. That's coming up. It was, Diane, an amazing experience. Ronnie Lynn said wildlife started hanging out when everybody had gone. Very true. Underneath where we are now, it's one of the most intricate tube networks in London. Now, most of the tube stations were originally, in the 1860s, when they first started in London, what they called cut and cover. So they dug a trench in the roads in front of us. They only dug the trench as deep as the train would allow, and then they would put steel girders over it. So they didn't dig in yards and yards into what we would call bedrock. Nowadays we have TBMs, tunnel boring machines, which can do that. But I'm going to post an image, and it should be the image exactly where we're about to stand. Let's stand here. And I'm going to post this image. This is what's underneath us, an artist's impression of the tube network. And I find that phenomenal. During the lockdown, did you actually have to stay home indoors? Yes, I suppose every country had their own regulations, and you did in London. You were allowed to go and exercise. There were restrictions as to how far you could go. But I had essential needs. So my mother, who lives in southwest London, I live in southeast. And my older brother, who had a few medical issues. The two of them weren't going out, or couldn't go out. So they were shielding, as it were. And they needed some shopping done. So my essential work was to go shopping for them and deliver that shopping. So I was allowed to, but I would shop, have it delivered to me, and then it would go over and drop it off to them. Strange times, right? Explain the story of the people falling on the escalator, Joyce. That is during the Second World War, and that is people sheltering from the Blitz above, sleeping underground. They slept on the tube tracks, but if there was no space, and they would have to get a ticket to do it, if there was no space on the track or on the platform, they would just simply sleep on the escalator itself. In the 1980s, this was Tower Records right in front of us. Used to go here many a time. Let me see a few more images that we have. So these are old images from how Piccadilly Circus used to look. It is lovely for an evening walk, isn't it? So I'm posting a few images on the chat of how things used to look before the neon came. Right in front of us, in the distance, behind the neon and LED placards, is the Regent Palace Hotel. Let's post that. You would have been able to see that years ago. Now, let's walk over here. I want to show you the London Pavilion. This was an old music hall and theatre. And it was home to Body Worlds, Gunther von Hagen. Ripley's Believe It or Not was here. But originally, from the 1850s, this building here was a theatre, music hall, revue, cabaret, vaudeville, sketch shows. And this is A Hard Day's Night. That's on the chat. So they used to have a lot of movie premieres here. Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much. It's so bright, right? London's Radio City Music Hall, definitely. People don't look up. When they're in Piccadilly Circus, there's a phrase, it's like Piccadilly Circus in here. You bump into people, you're always looking down, you're looking straight forward, you're never looking up unless you see this. The Times Square of Piccadilly Circus. Like a mini Times Square. But that's what we look up at. Otherwise, people are just trying to avoid other people. To be honest, this isn't even that busy. This is Anteros, not Eros. It's a statue. It's also called the Shaftesbury Fountain. The Earl of Shaftesbury created a road, Shaftesbury Avenue, to link St Giles Circus, which is to the right of us, to Piccadilly Circus. We always call this Eros, actually Anteros. Oh, thank you, Flora. This looks good. So you've got Eros, unrequited love, and Anteros, which this is, requited love. So love returned. I've actually stood outside the Criterion, which is a theatre built in the late 1800s, one of the first theatres in London to be gaslit. And it's 80% underground, this theatre. You actually have to walk up a few steps to get to their lobby, and then you have to walk down a few steps after you've collected your tickets to get to their top circle. And in the late 1800s, because it was gas lit, they invented intermissions because people were asphyxiating. And it gives new meaning to the phrase, the show left me breathless. It just pumped fresh air in at the intermission as well. 2:22. Over here it's 21:33. That's not the time. The time is 7:38. That's the name of the show. It's not a clock. And there's Regent Street in the distance. Built for the Prince Regent, most of it, designed by John Nash, but most of his buildings have gone now, but it still retains that style. So you've got Audrey, Anteros, and Eros. Eros was the Roman god of unrequited love, and Anteros was requited love, so love returned. But we just call it Eros. People just call it Eros, but it's actually Anteros, as in the opposite of the Eros. I hope this guy does well. Sounding good. And then behind Anteros, that is Piccadilly, which leads all the way to the Ritz and and the Royal Society of Arts. You eventually walk down that road, you would reach Green Park and then Hyde Park Corner. Well, it was commissioned, paid for, to commemorate the Earl of Shaftesbury. So, in a way, if you looked at it, it's called the Shaftesbury Memorial Fountain. The Earl of Shaftesbury was aristocracy, and he decided to pay for this road in front of us. Now, there were suburbs of London who didn't have much money, and there were suburbs that did. This area was a rich area. The people who were at the Strand, down near Trafalgar Square, they had money. They moved here to Piccadilly, St James's, Regent Street, and the people at the end of Shaftesbury Avenue didn't have money. It was one of the slums of Europe, St Giles Circus. And he commissioned this road, and they called the road Shaftesbury Avenue. So it was built by public subscription. The engineer was a man named Joseph Bazalgette. He was the main civil engineer of the Metropolitan Board of Works. And so he decided to design the road, but it was dedicated to the Earl of Shaftesbury, or Lord Shaftesbury, as he was later known. And underneath here, there are miles and miles of pipes which pump the waste down to the river. What are buskers? Buskers are street entertainers. What we've said, are you not allowed to smoke on the streets? Are you allowed to smoke on the streets? Yeah. People can smoke. You can get fined if you throw your cigarettes on the ground. That hasn't been enforced recently, though. So you see people throwing them all over the place. But any of these bins, these trash cans that you see here, never thought I'd be showing this on a tour. But it is interesting because, you know, it's cultural, isn't it? It's how it works. There's no excuse, really. Just put your cigarette out. They have different names for cigarettes in London than they do all over the world. I have a friend that says, I'm going for a burn. I'm going for a burn. That means he's having a cigarette. Another one is a tab, T-A-B. People say that. Robin Williams said when he first came to London, he didn't realise that the slang word for cigarette was fag, F-A-G. And he said a guy came up to him in Leicester Square and he said, fag? And Robin Williams said, no, but I find you very attractive. The great Robin Williams. Much missed. Robin Williams, much missed. There won't be another like him. And now we're on Shaftesbury Avenue. 3 major theatres here. The Lyric Theatre, showing Get Up, Stand Up, a Bob Marley musical. The Apollo Theatre, which is showing the Upstart Crow. It was called Upstart Crow. But post-COVID, they've added a the. It's now called The Upstart Crow. It's about the life of William Shakespeare in Stratford-upon-Avon. Now, Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare lived, is about 103 miles from here, or 166 kilometres. And a lot of people think that he wrote the plays in Stratford and then came to this area to try and hustle and sell those plays. But there was a sitcom based on his family life back in Stratford and how he got the ideas. And it's also a BBC show, but now a play with David Mitchell. The reason they say Upstart Crow is because another writer in Shakespeare's time, Robert Greene, wrote a little pamphlet saying that Shakespeare was an upstart crow. He was like a crow trying to pretend he was something else, a crow taking the feathers from another bird, like a peacock, trying to make himself better than he actually was. And that's an analogy for you take other people's ideas, Shakespeare, and you change the play, and you try and add little bits, but they're not your stories. I've missed the chat for a bit. A black cab's still doing okay, even with Uber and Lyft. Sure hope so. The black cabs are doing okay. They're expensive though. The black cabs are expensive, I must say that. The one thing that's happened with Uber is for safety. People can have an app and they can just book an Uber and they can see a picture of the driver. The black cab drivers have started doing that as well. But if you do come to London and if you've got that income, get a black cab because the actual cars themselves are amazing. An Uber driver, you can be in any car you want. I was advised a few years ago as an actor, being an Uber driver would be one of the best side professions to have. Because it could be 10 o'clock at night and I could be wide awake and I could just turn on, swipe right on my Uber app and say, I'm open for business. And I could drive into the West End and do a few hours work. But I suppose for safety, anything that makes people feel safe is important. Barry Kay said, I love black cabs and they have the knowledge. It's something you have to train to do, the knowledge. This is the Gielgud Theatre, and it's showing Aaron Sorkin, the great, mainly screenwriter's version of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. It's directed by Bartlett Sher. Bartlett Sher, an American director, recently directed in the West End My Fair Lady, which I saw at the Coliseum. Fantastic version of it. Now it's had three actors. It's had Rafe Spall playing Atticus Finch. It's then had Richard Coyle, and about to go into it, I believe in a couple of weeks, for the final run, is a great American actor named Matthew Modine. It's kind of a legend, isn't he, Matthew Modine? But the Gielgud used to be called the Globe. And then Sam Wanamaker, Chicago actor, in the 1970s, announced to the world that he was rebuilding Shakespeare's Globe Theatre on the South Bank. So this building and the owners of it, at the time, it was the Stolmos Theatre Company. They said, as a show of goodwill, we will rename our theatre the Gielgud, after Sir John Gielgud, one of the greatest actors in the West End. Acting till he was nearly 100 years old. Now owned by Delfont Mackintosh, Bernard Delfont and Cameron Mackintosh. And this is the Sondheim Theatre. Barry Kay saw To Kill a Mockingbird by Sorkin with Richard Thomas in Washington. It was fantastic. John Boy from the Waltons, right? Oh my goodness. I read a little interview with him, Richard Thomas, the other day, and somebody asked him, does he ever get fed up with people saying, good night, John Boy? And he said, no, it made his career. So the Sondheim Theatre, obviously, of course, named after the great Stephen Sondheim, showing Les Miserables, which was on at the Palace a bit further along. Now, I know that what I've done here has gone on a bit further and a bit longer than I should, but I wanted us to see, because we were asking about Shaftesbury Avenue, just the frontage of this. It's very modern. This is not neon, these are actually painted, printed signs. But you have two theatres that were both built between 1904 and 1906. So they should be twin theatres. They should look the same. But the Sondheim, which was known as the Queen's Theatre, was quite heavily bombed in 1940 and 1941. The whole lobby, the foyer, was destroyed. And it was only 10 years later that they redesigned the building and created a slightly more modern version, as you can see. What were the reviews on Jeff Daniels' version of Atticus? Oh, I don't know. Frank Finlay, James has seen as Atticus Finch. Would have been great. Jeff Daniels' version won 8 Tony Awards. Well, you can't argue with that. Now, I've gone on a few minutes more than I should. I don't want to cut into what the other guides are doing. So obviously, we have some fantastic guides on Hago. And the one thing I don't want to do is run into their tours when I've scheduled 40 minutes and I've run 46. But we're on Wardour Street, Chinatown. All the roads have Chinese and English. The original Chinatown was in the East End of London. And again, talking about the Second World War, quite heavily bombed. So they moved here to the Soho area because it was cheaper land. You can imagine such a thing. So you've got Chinese and English. And this is Dancy Place. Nobody ever goes down here, but it is a road. It's a little cut through. Little secret cut through of London. You've got two of the busiest roads. Rupert Street and Wardour Street, and in between them, one of the quietest lanes in London. John R. has said he is sure he saw Joe Orton's Prick Up Your Ears at a theatre in this area. I wonder, John, if that was at the Lyric Theatre. That might have been at the Lyric. I've got a feeling it could have been there. It's nice, right? Now, I will turn you back to me. Some of you may not have seen me yet. Thanks, folks. Really enjoyed your company. Thank you very much. Audrey's questioning me now. We are in the borough of Westminster. You could say the city of Westminster, but we're in London. If I said we're in the city of London with the capital C, you might be able to correct me. But we are in the borough of Westminster, in the city with the capital C of London, Greater London. London is big. You have the city of Camden. You have the city of Westminster. Let's just say we're in London. I live here all my life. The borough of Westminster in London. Central London. You've got the city of London. The only part that is the city with a capital C is, thank you, Audrey. You know what? I try and be silly. When somebody questions me, I go, what do you think you're doing? But I'm only having a joke, as you know. So you've got the city with the capital C, and that's the financial district. If you go in that direction behind us, let's say you were around St. Paul's Cathedral, there is a road that actually goes from Blackfriars all the way around St. Paul's Cathedral to the Tower. and the road is called London Wall. And if you walk along the road, you go through Ludgate, Moorgate, Bishopsgate, Cripplegate. They were the physical gates of London. But then they decided to create Central London, which is what we're in, and then Greater London, which now encompasses areas like Kent and Surrey. So Greater London is enormous. It's very confusing. I suppose it's like New York. A lot of people go to New York and they think that New York is just Manhattan. A lot of people think that New York is the 5 boroughs, and then a lot of people realize that New York is also this enormous state as well. That's my way of thinking about it. Thank you so much. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for contributions. Thank you for asking me questions. I love it. It's a challenge, and I think, hold on. What do I know? You're so lovely. Join me again. I think I'm off tomorrow, and then I think I'm on over the weekend for a couple of tours, so do join me for those. I will get you off my face. Thank you, Sharon. Oh, we're doing a little Shakespeare's Footsteps. We're doing a little London walk around the Globe Theatre. And that will be, Tish, is that Saturday? Tish is my secretary on all things. There you go. Sunday. Oh my goodness. What is wrong with me? I have to rely on Tish. I've got a diary, but when you're in the middle of these, you forget what you're doing. Let's just leave us here. So I'm Gerard, Gerard, or Gerard. This is Gerrard Street. Spelled slightly differently, but they did their best. Thank you, Tish. Don't you use your exclamation marks with me, Tish. Thank you so much. Audrey's from NYC, so you get the analogy of the New York. People say, I went to New York, and I say, did you go to Williamsburg? And they say, no, I was in Manhattan. And I think, what are you talking about? You're only in Manhattan then? Look at the scaffolding. I know that Nick talks a lot about scaffolding. I said at the beginning of the tour, I kind of wanted to dedicate what we did tonight to Nick Richmond, a relatively new London guide who's fantastic. But when he was around Westminster Way last night, a cyclist went past him and tried to grab his gear. But I just want to kind of dedicate this to him and say that what he's doing is brilliant work, and don't be deterred by it, because it can happen to any of us. I often find that the quietest places in London and the busiest places in London are the okay places in London. So we are now in one of the busiest parts of London. Busiest parts of London. It is heaving with people, and I feel safe. But if I was in a slightly quieter part of London, I wouldn't feel so safe. I think Nick is fine. He said that he grabbed hold of his gimbal and his phone, and he didn't want anyone to stop him doing his work. So, legendary, good work. MB has said, the Chinese lanterns there all the time. They are, but John has watched Sam in Edinburgh get hassled one night. So, yeah, it happens, It happens. People are legends. We try and deal with it. I was saying that these lanterns are here all the time, but this is a new one. This has only just been put here in the last week or so. That's a new lantern. I love them though. And it was pouring with rain today. But now it's lovely and dry. And this is why people come out of the woodwork. Even I did this. So, again, look at this. Nearly an hour. What am I What am I doing, guys? I'm so sorry. I'll just keep walking. If anyone wants to stay with me for a couple of minutes, to get my train home, am walking through Leicester Square, so you can stay with me if you want. I will definitely make it end before the hour is up. So if people have plans, normally the plans are on the hour. Barry has said never apologise. Well, yeah. Thank you. Diana said, my son got his phone grabbed from outside his place in Battersea, grabbed by a cyclist. It's interesting, isn't it? It's certain areas, the busiest and the quietest areas are normally okay. It's those middle areas where you have quiet roads. I'm sure it's like this all over the world, in the big cities. You have a quiet road and somebody can grab something and then go burning it off into the distance. I don't feel unsafe here with the equipment that I have. The mic, the phone, the gimbal, they're worth some money. But I think if anyone grabbed anything, there are a few hundred people around to help out. Do you know what I mean? Strange. I'm doing on the 31st of October a Halloween tour, an Unsolved Mysteries tour. Not ghosts, not murders, not body snatchers. There are so many guides in London that do that and could do that a lot better than me. But I thought I would talk about unsolved mysteries, vanishings, time slips, doppelgangers. And I'm planning to do it along the riverbank from Westminster all the way to Battersea Park. So we have a nice little mood walk along the river. Places that I don't think guides have been, that entire walk along the river. And when Diane said that about Battersea, well, I'll make sure I'll keep my wits about me. Okay. Thank you, Tish, for posting that. Yeah, I am really interested and excited about doing that. I've been planning it for a while. I've been writing something. I'm now trying to learn it. That'll be the 31st at 9 o'clock my time. So we've got this girl in this photo. This is the wonderful Mary Poppins. There are quite a few of these film stars, famous characters. This guy has been here for the last 20 years. He goes for it. Okay.
Fill my heart with song, let me sing forevermore.
Jonna said she had 10 men surrounding her, being abusive and nasty to her. That was Sam, right, in Edinburgh. Not good. Poor Sam. Yeah, it can happen. The middle of Leicester Square, just to give you a bit of a mood walk for the next minute or so. We've got a human beatbox up here. These are quite popular, have been since the 1980s. You've got a good microphone, a good speaker. You can sound like a drum kit. Maybe I will do a tour like this fella one day. I will rap my entire tour. Can you imagine? Can we hear this, by the way? I don't know if anyone does this on Hago. In the footsteps of the Beatles in London. I've done all of Liverpool. It's one of the most joyous days of my life. Well, maybe, Barry, but I know that Paul Endicott, wonderful Paul Endicott, does something about the Beatles in London.
What do you think, guys? Have we got time for one more?
I'm now thinking, Barry, maybe I need to create a rap tour. Okay, well, this is something that maybe I'll think about. James M., what's happened to all the prestigious cinemas? Well, that's the Odeon. They're still here. Sorry I'm being a bit quiet. Just thinking of how to do my Leicester Square Royal Theatre tour in rhythm with this guy. So he's gone off like hip hop now. He's now into drum and bass. I don't know if I'm that fast. This is the Empire, so this is still a cinema, but it was a theatre, the Empire Theatre. John said when we were in London, always stayed at a hotel here. Can't remember the name. Have a little think. Quite a few. They change names to hotels all the time. I don't know if you guys can see this, but right up there in the centre. So you saw Mary Poppins. They have a few of these film icons. That's Batman up there. He's hidden away from everyone. Okay, I shall leave you be. Time to give you all a break. I will see you on Sunday, if not before. Barry said the mousetrap. It mirrored Queen Elizabeth's reign. How many times did she see it? Did they keep changing the end? No, the ending stayed the same. Always stayed the same. As I mentioned, I made the big joke in the beginning. It's been running for 70 years with the same cast. I thought the joke was so good, I'll tell it a second time, beginning and end of the tour. It got as many laughs at the end as it did at the beginning. Thank you so much. Lots of love to you. One last thing. John, saw somebody famous in the Hippodrome, but sadly I can't remember who. Have a think, John. Next time we're here, try and remind me of that. The Hippodrome was for a while called the Talk of the Town. So it was like a jazz venue. And people like Ella Fitzgerald and Stevie Wonder and Tony Bennett, Liza Minnelli, a lot of famous people played there and brought albums out from being at the Hippodrome. Live albums. So have a little think about that. Lots of love to you all. Peter Stream perspectives. Could have been Georgia Brown. Have a think, John. Okay, I'm sorry to run 20 minutes over, but I enjoyed what we did tonight. Leave you with the final view of Leicester Square. Hasn't changed too much. There's TKTS. So if you ever come to London, you want to get half-price tickets and you're not using phones or you don't have a signal, come to TKTS. You get a lot of half-price tickets. On the day. One of the great ticket booths in the West End. That's but we're losing signal. Lots of love to you all, and I will see you in the next couple of days. Thank you for all your support, and thanks to all the guides as well for being an inspiration. And keep hay going. See you very soon. Bye-bye.